drive. Tatum the finish. It is Baylor 18. The mission commanded is mission accomplished.
What's up, everyone? This is Noa Dalzell, and I'm here with an episode of You Got Boston, live from Memphis at the FedEx Forum, where the Boston Celtics just defeated the Memphis Grizzlies 121-103 to begin preseason action. And boy, was it nice to have actual basketball to talk about. It feels like it's been off season for months now. Then we had training camp for about a week and a half where we heard all about the pace. We heard all about the physicality, but to actually see all the new faces that we've been getting to know and to actually see how it's all coming together was pretty cool. So that's what we got today. We got a pretty top to bottom effort with multiple contributors. 3 guys sat out, I think just precautionary, just rest, as you know, some guys are going to be load managed throughout these 4 preseason games. No Peyton Pritchard, no Anthony Simons, and no Neemias Queta, which meant that the long debate about who's going to start, Pritchard or Simons, was definitely not settled in this game, which I didn't think it was going to be. But we had a starting lineup of Derrick White, Jaylen Brown, Sam Hauser, Chris Boucher, and Xavier Tillman, which was actually a really solid group. And early on, they jumped to a double-digit lead. Everybody was hitting threes. They attempted 53 threes in this game. So if you were wondering, are the new Celtics without Tatum, without Holiday, without Horford, without Porzingis, are they still going to get up threes? The answer is yes. That is not going to change. And I think this roster has different strengths and weaknesses, but still has a ton of shooters. And that was without 2 of their best shooters in Pritchard and Simon. So definitely a good sign they were able to get up 53. They weren't super efficient in this game. They made 15 of 53, so 28.3%. But it's what got them the lead early on, was just driving kicks, clean looks. Sam Hauser hit one, Jaylen hit one, Derrick White hit one, and that was kind of the game early on, kind of blew that open. Lots of takeaways from this one, especially I was sitting courtside for this game. Memphis is one of 2 arenas. I think the Dallas Mavericks are the other ones where reporters still sit right behind the scoreboard. I was sitting right next to the NBC Sports Boston crew, Drew Carter and Brian Scalabrine, which is a great vantage point on the game. You can hear what the coaches are saying. You can see conversations, you can see action, you can feel it a little bit more than you can sitting up high where the media usually sits at these games. So all that's coming in this You Got Boston reaction episode. I'm going to be on the road a lot during the season, and so I want to bring you guys the first immediate reaction and perspective from being in Memphis, from being in Toronto, where I'll be on Friday. First thing I'll say is Derrick White. Derrick White played 27 minutes in this game. His box score line is not going to jump out at you. He had 16 points, 10 assists, 3 rebounds, 2 blocks, and a steal. Great stat line, but nothing crazy. That being said, when I watched him play in this game, it dawned on me that I think he's been a little bit underrated this offseason. There's been a lot of hype about Jaylen Brown and what kind of leap he's going to be able to make as the number 1 option and no longer playing alongside Tatum and all of that. And there's been a lot of hype, some of it perpetuated by me, around Peyton Pritchard and whether he's going to be the starting point guard, whether he can make another leap from 6th player of the year, 6th man of the year to a potential fringe all-star maybe, right? That's me that said that. But I think the third guy in their mix of vets that have contributed at a high level for the Celtics team in the past is Derrick White, and he actually might be the one that has the ball in his hands the most this season. And obviously the Celtics have long played through Jason Tatum, who was in the building, by the way, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But Derrick White had the ball in his hands in this game, and he didn't have many 10 assist nights last season. And I think he's going to have them quite a bit this year because they're going to play through him a little bit more. He's been the team's starting point guard for the last 2 seasons, but it hasn't always felt that way because sometimes Jason Tatum was the guy running the offense, bringing the ball up, kind of serving as that point forward role. And I think we're going to see a lot more of Derrick in that position. And obviously he's one of the team's best shooters, most efficient players, best defenders. Like he has been, by all the advanced analytics, been one of their top players for a couple seasons now. And so he might actually be the guy that makes the biggest leap with more opportunity. Not necessarily more minutes, but more shot attempts, more time when the ball's in his hand, higher usage rate. Like, I think that's a storyline that's been a little bit underrated. And it's not that anything crazy happened in this one. Again, 16 points, 10 assists, was only in 27 minutes, but it was a little bit of a reminder where you look at this new roster, and he actually might be the guy who has quite a bit of the load offensively. And obviously, no Peyton Pritchard, no Anthony Simons. Those are going to be 2 high usage players as well. But I liked what I saw from him quite a bit. And I also liked what I saw from Jaylen Brown, who is fresh, a couple months removed from off-season surgery. I asked him about it the other day at practice. He said that it's been a seamless transition. It's been a physical training camp, and he feels really good. And I thought he looked really good athletically. Like, he looked better than he did when last playoffs ended, and he was battling through that meniscus tear and was dealing with a lot of pain, and got in injections and all of that. At least to my vantage point, and that aligns with what he has said, he is now healthy, and I think that's going to bode really well for him. He finishes this game with 21 points on 6 of 13 shooting. He got a little bit of cold later in the game, but was very efficient and had complete command offensively early on here. And I think it showed you a burst of, he played the entire first quarter. That is historically what he has preferred. Last season, they kind of switched it for Tatum to play the entire first, but the year they won the title, that was the rotation. And so it was good to see him back in the mix that way, and he got off to a very hot start, which is pretty characteristic. I mean, that's Jaylen Brown has been one of the top first quarter players for a while now, and so I think he'll probably play entire first quarters again with Jason Tatum sidelined, and that's good for him and his ability to kind of find a groove. I think that's benefited him historically. Those are obviously the headliners, but those were not the guys that I was the most intrigued to see, because we all know there's a ton of new additions on this roster, and we haven't seen them play together. We haven't seen them play alongside Derrick and Jaylen, and I was intrigued to see how they would look. And we got contributions across the board, and it wasn't even that one guy stole the show. Certainly there were some guys that stood out more than others, but just rattling through, we got 11 points and 4 rebounds, a steal and a block from Chris Boucher in 20 minutes. His shot was a little clunky. He was 1 of 6 from 3, but he did a lot of good things, and he served kind of a connective role on offense. And the other thing I'll say about Boucher is he is the oldest player on this team, and it showed in a good way a couple of times when guys got emotional. Hugo was a little bit hard on himself, and it's clear, like, okay, there is a veteran out here. There's a guy who has been through it. He was undrafted. He was a G League player. He battled his way to become an NBA rotation player. Now he's been in the league for a long time, nearly a decade. And so it's good to have guys like that on the roster. And they don't have Al Horford. They don't have Drew Holiday. And Chris Boucher is not those guys. Like, he doesn't have their resume. He doesn't have their talent level. Like, he doesn't, nobody's pretending like Chris Boucher is those, either of those players. But I do think it's nice to have a vet that comes in that kind of understands the struggle of battling from kind of being on the fringe of the league to being kind of where he is now. So that's shown through in various moments where he kind of pulled players aside and kind of showed those leadership qualities. And I have a whole feature on Chris Boucher. You can check that out on Celtics blog. I also did a whole podcast episode about him, so I won't talk about him too much. And he also wasn't one of the names that stood out to me the most in this one. I would actually say Josh Minott, who I haven't talked about a ton, was probably my biggest surprise or standout in this game. In 26 minutes, he finished with 8 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, and a block. Shot 4 of 9 from the field. He was perfect inside the arc. He was 0 for 5 from 3. I'm not sure about his shot, but I'm pretty sure about a lot of other aspects of his game. The shot looks a little funky and it hasn't gone in at a high clip. So that's an open question mark for me. Like, a lot of these guys, it's going to come down to whether or not they can shoot. And one game is not going to tell me that. So I'll refrain from making too many judgments on his 3-point shooting. But I will say he crashed the glass, got 3 offensive rebounds, was very aggressive in that regard. I asked him about it afterwards, and he said, he has the green light to crash the glass here. And I think that's true of the entire team. Like, that is going to be an point of emphasis for them. And I think it's a trend that the league in general is heading toward. But Baylor Scheierman finished with 4 offensive rebounds. Luka Garza did as well. As a team, they finished with 17. They're going to need multiple looks on offense. They're going to need to crash the glass. They're going to need to kind of do that. And so it was good to see him get active there, active hands. He was an active defender. Everything that I've heard from talking to reporters in Minnesota is that he has the tools to be a good defender, but he was oftentimes a little distracted defensively. And so, he just wasn't able to be disciplined for entire games. And when he got limited opportunities and you come in and you're not disciplined on a championship contender with a ton of front court talent, it's going to be, you're going to have a short leash. And I think that's what happened to him these past few seasons. But in this game, honestly, I liked what he brought to the defensive end. I thought he was very active, and I could see him playing a bigger role in this team than maybe we initially anticipated, or at least I initially anticipated. Luka Garza also had some good moments in this game. He finished with 10 points and 10 rebounds, 4 offensive, got to the line quite a bit. He was 6 of 9 from the line, 2 of 3 from the field. His rebounding is going to be important. This whole team is going to have to really lock in on the defensive glass because they lost several of their best rebounders last season. Jason Tatum, Al Horford, they're smaller. They went from being one of the biggest teams in the NBA to one of the smallest teams. So it's going to have to be a full team effort. You look across the board, Jaylen Brown had 1 rebound in this game. Sam Hauser had 1 rebound in this game. If we're talking like full games, and obviously those guys did not play a full game, like they are each going to have to ensure that they are more active on the glass because I don't think they have bigs that are going to grab 15 boards a night. Obviously, Neemias Queta is somebody who has an advantage, at least athletically, and I think has a high ceiling on that front. He doesn't play in this game, so maybe that helps address some of those defensive challenges that I think at moments became apparent. And so Luka Garza, though, I did like a lot about what he did today. I thought that he played with a ton of energy. He's a good screen setter. He's a good cutter. Like, he was very active in this game, and that's part of why he got to the line as much as he did. In just 16 minutes, 9 free throw attempts is pretty solid and certainly is a good thing. That's something that they're going to want to try to rack up as much as they can, is getting to the line, getting those free points. And then the other guy that I'll mention is Baylor Scheierman, who played 21 minutes in this game, and he probably had as far as like who's going home feeling good about their performances, who's feeling a little bit probably more down. Baylor struggled offensively in this one. I think Baylor always does a lot of little things, and I'm personally a fan of his game. He plays really hard. He is at the right place at the right time oftentimes. He's a good passer. But he had a little bit of a sloppy game here. 3 for 13 from the field. Had 4 turnovers, I should say. He was a -3 in a game where almost everybody was in the positives. And he is going to have to find his spots and pick his spots more carefully offensively. Like, that is one of the things for him right now. I'm not sure about how pure of a three-point shooter he is. I think he was advertised, or at least like a lot of people are like, oh, he's the next Sam Hauser. He's going to be discount Sam Hauser. And he's not. Sam Hauser is a world-class elite three-point shooter. He was 3 of 6 from 3 in this one, and that's just like normal Sam Hauser stuff. Baylor was 3 of 9, but in general, like, there's a more open question around his three-point shooting. And so it's just what kinds of shots are going to be best for him. Catch and shoot off the dribble. He had some drives today that like were just tough looks, and I just don't know that those are the most high percentage shots the Celtics can get when he's on the floor. So a tough night for Baylor. Again, never going to overreact to one performance, but he did have a little bit of a tough summer league offensively. He hasn't had the most efficient beginning to his NBA career, and he's 25. So we'll see how the rest of preseason goes. We'll see how the beginning of the year goes for him. I do think he'll find a better rhythm than he's in right now, but that is going to have to come around for him to be on the court over these other guys that can also do a lot of the things that he does well. Jordan Walsh, I thought, had some great minutes early on. He left with adductor tightness. I think he pulled his adductor when he kind of made this weird defensive play that almost kind of forced him to make a split. I actually turned to one of the other reporters in that moment and said, looks like that's the kind of play that I think a normal person would be unable to walk for 3 months, and Jordan just walked it off, and then he was on the injury report later in the game, so I do think that it caught up to him. But he was playing super hard. He was in the right place at the right time. He looked more disciplined as a role player than he did in the first 2 years that he had as a Celtic, but he only played for 8 minutes, which was unfortunate because I really liked what I was seeing from him. So we'll see if that's a lingering long-term thing. Not so sure. I don't think it's any cause for concern, but we'll see if that affects his availability the rest of preseason here. But overall, I really did like what I saw out of the new guys. I haven't mentioned one guy who made his actual NBA debut, and that was Hugo Gonzalez, who played 18 minutes, had 8 points, 3 rebounds, assists, steal, and 3 blocks, which is actually pretty astounding. He had a chase down block that was ridiculous. I mean, I was sitting in the front row. I usually don't react to things on the court. I'm not supposed to react as a member of the media, but it was hard not to a couple times because he had a monster dunk, he had a monster chase down block. And you can just see the seal that, his potential is just bursting. Like, you can see that. He made some mistakes. Joe Mazzulla was talking to him literally the entire game, correcting things that he did wrong, and then he was trying to implement it and fix it in real time. But he's 19 years old. He's a rookie. He's never played in an NBA game. He's picking up so many new concepts. So it's fine. It's okay for him to make those mistakes. He struggled a little bit more with the ball in his hand. I don't think he's going to be an NBA level ball handler early on. So that's an area of potential growth for him. But like some of those plays, like, you just can't teach that. You can't teach that chase on block. You can't teach the athleticism that comes with that. And, he had the biggest hands in the draft class. I think you saw that in some of those blocks that he had today. And so for a rookie, for a 19-year-old who is not really expected to impact the Celtics much in year one, I thought this was a really good debut for him. So I liked what I saw. We did see some of the younger guys get in as well. I'll talk about those guys too. I mean, there's a couple guys that are battling for Exhibit 10 contracts, battling for two-way deals potentially. And certainly that is an area that they are going to have to kind of focus in on. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. PrizePicks is a fun and simple experience where you can select your favorite players. For example, I really like watching Josh Allen play. I can decide if I want to do more or less than 270 pass yards or whatever the player call-out projections are each week. PrizePicks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you should cash in. PrizePicks is also the best way to get action on sports in more than 40 states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. PrizePicks puts their users first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and accurate and secure. PrizePicks offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. So the big disclaimer on this game is that the Celtics were playing a very shorthanded Memphis Grizzlies team that were without 3 starters, no John Moran, no Jaren Jackson, no Zach Edey. The Memphis Grizzlies injury curse just continues. I don't know how to explain it, but it is just something else. And so once again, this is not new, but I feel like most of the times in the last few years when the Celtics have faced the Grizzlies, they faced a very thin version of that team. And this game was no exception. And so you can't draw too much from from this particular matchup, but I will say they played really hard and they played as connected as they could be considering how early in the season it is, and that there are a lot of new faces. There's a lot to integrate. There's a new system. Jaylen Brown talked about this quite a few times, but what you're going to have to make up with all the new guys is not just like all the talent you lost, but you lost veterans that knew how to play together, that knew how to mesh quickly. Like when they acquired Jrue Holiday, there wasn't much of a learning curve. Like Jrue Holiday is a master at adjusting to new environments and contributing to winning basketball and all of that. And so I think what is currently the situation is you have a lot of young guys, right? You have Jordan Walsh, Baylor Scheierman, and Hugo, who pretty much all three of them have not really played much in the NBA. I mean, Jordan's minutes have been very limited, so have Baylor's, and Hugo obviously comes in as a teenager. And then you have Luka Garza and Josh Minott, who also haven't really played much in the NBA, despite having a few years of NBA experience, and that certainly does help. And I think you saw that today, that they looked like they were a step ahead of some of those guys with less experience then. And then even guys like Chris Boucher, like there's just a lot of new roles, new faces, new combinations. We haven't seen Anthony Simons make his debut yet. That should be fun. But what I asked Joe about that afterwards, and he said, there is a level of like trust as far as that everybody's trying to impact winning. Like there's a level of buy-in in that sense. And so maybe you don't know exactly where the defender is going to be at, and maybe you don't know exactly where the guy who where the cutter is going to be, because those are kind of instinctive habits and things that you build over time. But there is a sense of like everybody's fully bought into the system. And I can say that I've only covered 2 training camps. I've only covered the Celtics. So I'm sure maybe in 20 years, I'll have a better sense of like, how to read through the things that people are saying at camp and what's just like normal every year talk. But I've been looking around the league. I've been talking to reporters from around the league, and not every camp sounds like this. This training camp, everybody is 100% like, they love playing for Joe. They love the coaching staff. They're committed to winning. They don't care about their role. Like that's just not what you're hearing from camps across the league. And I've cross-checked this with my reporter friends from different teams. And so I think you saw that in this game. You saw guys cheering each other on. You saw guys excelling in their roles, playing really hard. There were a lot of mistakes. There were a lot of defensive lapses. There were a lot of moments where offensively, I could tell the execution was not quite there. But I think the intent was there, and I think you're going to see the team mesh closer and closer together as time goes on. And so maybe this wouldn't have worked against a Memphis team that was fully healthy or against a better team. But against this team came out and looked like the same championship Celtics that we're used to seeing, where they just are better than their opponents. And honestly, anytime you have Derrick White and Jaylen Brown on the court, you might have the 2 best players on the court. Certainly in this game, they have the 2 best players, but there's going to be a lot of games actually that is the case. We'll be surprised, I think, because in full strength teams maybe can compete, but there's a lot of injuries around the league right now. The Celtics, besides for Tatum, are fully healthy, knock on wood, but that's been the word at camp so far, and nobody's really dealing with anything that we're aware of. So a lot of teams are starting the year with multiple guys out. That's not the case here, so that could give them a little bit of a leg up, but it's going to be a slow start. It's going to be a little bit of a learning curve, just figuring out guys' tendencies and where people are on the court. And I'm sure we're going to see it visibly. Like, I'm sure it's going to get better week after week. Camp is one thing. Obviously, they've been together for like 9 to 12 weeks is the range where guys got to Boston. But, it takes real game reps, I think, as well. So that's what I was really curious to see here. Overall, I left higher on a lot of these guys than I was coming into the night. The one other guy I'll give a shout out to is Ron Harper Jr., who is currently on an Exhibit 10 deal. This is his second consecutive year where he has spent training camp with the Celtics. And he is currently not on a two-way contract, but that could always change. There are 4 guys on this roster: Jalen Bridges, Kendall Brown, and then Wendell Moore, who did not play in this game, alongside Ron Harper Jr. They're all on Exhibit 10s. And so right now, the 3 two-way contracts are Amari Williams, Max Shulga, the 2 draft picks from the second round this year, and then RJ Lewis, who we haven't really heard much about. He wasn't at Summer League. He was acquired in the trade to send George Niang to the Jazz. And so there is some possibility maybe one of those guys gets bumped out, and Ron Harper Jr. is certainly somebody that I have my eye on because they brought him to a second year of camp. He is a ball handler. He's somebody that I think they trust a little bit in that regard, and he's familiar with the system because he's already done one camp with the Celtics. He was in Maine for the beginning of last year, and then he signed a two-way with the Pistons, but that didn't go anywhere. So we'll see if anything develops there. I do have my eye on him, though, because he's a returner, and I think of those 4 two-way players, he's probably the one that stands out the most. So we'll see. But in any case, it was a lot of fun to be back in real basketball action covering the Celtics. A lot of fun to be here in Memphis, one of my favorite arenas in the country, simply because of where we get to sit. It's cool to be able to hear the coaching, to be able to hear kind of the banter. Joe, arguing with refs, arguing with the ref about certain calls. Sam Cassell was super hyped a couple times when guys were checking out of the game. So hearing him be like, that was awesome, great work. So there was a lot of positivity on the sideline. I think the number one thing that I heard Joe get frustrated with is when they were rebounding lapses. And a couple of times he called a timeout accordingly. So I'm sure that'll continue to be the trend because rebounding loses you games, and they can't afford to lose games on the glass because their margin of error is just so much thinner than years past. They don't have somebody like Tatum who comes in and just grabs like 12 rebounds on a given night, seemingly without trying. Obviously, he's trying. So we'll keep my eye on all of that. I'm looking forward to seeing the guys who didn't play tonight: Anthony Simons, Peyton Pritchard, and Neemias Queta. All those guys I expect to play Friday versus the Raptors in their second preseason game. All those guys were working out this morning. So they had shoot around this morning. It was a pretty rigorous looking shoot around. Actually, Queta and Pritchard were playing one-on-one against each other quite a bit. And Anthony Simons might have been the last guy on the court. So in hindsight, maybe they went extra hard this morning because they weren't playing tonight. But I don't think anybody's hurt or anything like that because they all seemed fully active then. So looking forward to seeing Simons make his Celtics debut for sure. Obviously, incredibly talented player. I asked Xavier Tillman about him today, and he said, he's just a bucket. Like, that's just the reality. He can score in a multitude of ways. It's been really impressive to everybody at camp. So that's certainly what I'm most excited to see. Also excited to see an even more empowered Peyton Pritchard. And then how does Neemias Queta fit in, both addressing some of the defensive woes, but then also on the glass, which I think you could see today that they don't have a center who is just a prolific rebounder the way that they once did. And so all that is to come. You can check out the Garden Report. We had a full hour and 15-minute long show reacting to this game. If you haven't watched that, go check that out. You can watch the full press conferences. Joe Mazzulla, Hugo Gonzalez, and Josh Minott spoke after this one. All of those are on CLNS Media as well. And then I will give a shout out to our new WNBA channel, WNBA Today on CLNS. I was not at Game 3. I was at the preseason game, so I'm actually about to watch Game 3 between the Aces, where Asia Wilson had a game winner right after this, and then we'll have our reaction to that game on the channel as well, so go subscribe. As always, this is You Got Boston. I'm Noa Dalzell. Thank you for watching. Tell a friend, leave a like, leave a comment, and come back for more. We'll have more reactions throughout the rest of this preseason.